Hi, welcome back to Gabe Complains About Companies. Now, to be fair, I've worked with quite a few music production hardware and software companies in the past. I will be happy to continue to do so, and they're great. They've been great to work with, but a reminder, they're not your friends and will do whatever they think they can to make money and keep growing and keep going, frankly. And fortunately, it seems like a lot of the music production tech companies out there haven't caught onto the very scummiest practices that you're going to see in like the gaming and tech world, but I won't put it past them. So there are some trends I see that have me a little concerned, and I want to just get them out of my system, especially since Gabe Complains About Companies seems to be a format that people are receptive to. And if I'm going to continue to work with companies, I also want to hold them to account if they engage in anti-consumer behavior. So the first thing I want to talk about is subscription services. It seems like every company and their mom these days are switching over to subscription models one way or another, to varying degrees of egregiousness. Because I don't have a problem with it in principle necessarily, but after a while it gets exhausting. So I want to talk about what it's like from the consumer point of view and what companies should keep in mind, and what it's like from the company point of view, and then how I recommend you navigate it. And then I've got some other thoughts I want to like pivot into after that. So from a consumer point of view, subscriptions do have some benefits, especially in the software world. Maybe it gives you access to a much wider array of things. For instance, something like Splice Sounds, where instead of having to buy a bunch of individual sample packs, you get to cherry pick what you want, and you really have like unlimited sounds at your fingertips, but you only just choose the ones you want for the credits that you spend. That can actually be pretty nice, especially for Splice, because that's a subscription model that's month to month, and you can cancel at any time. And so you basically could subscribe for a month for $8, get 100 sounds, just go ham getting a bunch of new sounds to play with, and then unsubscribe. That's kind of great. If Splice ever wants to sponsor me, they're going to have to be okay with me saying that, because that's how I use it, to be completely honest. And their business model is set up in that way. Of course, for them, they would much rather I subscribe and then stay subscribed so that they get a nice, reliable source of revenue and that I don't churn out too often. That's the term that's used in those circles. If they have a high rate of churn, they're going to have trouble with having a sustainable business. Like, for instance, Netflix, up until pretty recently, had a pretty low rate of churn. People just paid their Netflix bill as if it was like a utility bill, like your internet or your, water or electricity. It was kind of just, well, I've got the water bill and the whatever bill and the Netflix bill, and that was just standard. Whereas for most streaming services, people might hop in for a month to watch The Mandalorian and then dip afterwards. And companies don't like that. And now that Netflix is experiencing that problem and long-time dedicated users are starting to drop off, it's really hurting their prospects at growth. So Splice doesn't like it if they have a high rate of churn. If a customer is like me, they don't like that. And so there are ways they try to lock people in. For instance, if you have a lot of Splice credits, you can only have access to them if you stay subscribed. So at one point, I ended up accidentally accruing a stockpile of like 900 Splice credits, and I can't possibly go through and like download 900 sounds. That's just overkill for what I need, and I wouldn't even be able to find the stuff I actually want to use, so it's not worth it. But it's like, I want to keep these though, because I could absolutely use them, and it's nice having a bit of a buffer so I can just download whatever sound I want without worrying about it. But if I unsubscribe, I lose those credits, or at least lose access to them. And that's where my problems start to kick in. On one hand, I understand that for companies, they really want to keep churn low so they have reliable numbers and hopefully reliable growth. But as a consumer, I want to be able to churn in and out of subscription services because I don't want to be paying hundreds of dollars a month for all of these different subscriptions. I would, in that case, eventually it'll add up to the point where I was better off just buying something outright and then calling it a day. So, Splice it's a little iffy in the way that it's done, but overall, because it's a good deal for me, I basically pay $8 for a self-curated sample pack and then cancel. That's still a good deal for me, and I still recommend it. Just be careful about how you use it, and don't forget to cancel if you don't want to accrue credits that you might end up losing access to. Some companies, however, will try to lock you in for a year. And if I recall correctly, at one point when I used to use Adobe stuff, I was using the student discount, but in order to get the student discount, you couldn't just do month to month. You had to sign up for a year, and then you could pay monthly, but you're locked in to pay that much for a year with no ability to cancel. There's a very good reason that now I am quite determined not to give Adobe $1. And so I use Photopea, which is like a free Photoshop emulator that does the bare minimum, and it's enough for me to make thumbnails and make basic tweaks to images. And then I use DaVinci Resolve, which is free and as good as or better than Premiere for video editing. My editor and I both use it because it's great. Point being, I personally don't like being locked into long-term deals because I don't know what my needs for software and such are going to be month to month. And so that kind of thing is making me nervous that different companies are starting to get into it more and more. Like Roland's got the Roland Cloud subscription, which, to be completely frank with you, is a bit janky in the way it's executed, and that's the main thing keeping me from using it. And also because, like, if I need to design sounds, I'll do it on my 707, place of privilege, I know. Or if I want MC101 sounds, I'll generate a random patch or just tweak presets until they fit what I need, and that is absolutely more than enough. And I don't love that you have to pay a subscription cost for the plugin that lets you design your own MC101 or MC707 sounds on the computer. I don't love that. I'm not a huge fan of that. I much prefer the Novation Components model where it's browser-based and you have free access to it. But of course, once again, Roland probably can only sell so many gadgets until they start to hit an upper limit of customers that they are able to reach, who will be willing to shell out money for a Groovebox. And so they try to lock in their existing customers for like plugins and subscription services to keep the company's revenue growing and to keep it consistent. Because, now that I have a 707 and an MC101, I don't need to buy the VerseLab, for instance. Like, I had it on loan from Zounds, but I sent it back when that loan period was up. And even though I kind of miss it a little bit, like, I have no friggin' reason to buy another one. And so I'm not gonna. Or Native Instruments have been getting into the subscription game. And once again, if you pay like a certain monthly amount and get access to a bunch of plugins, that can be really nice. But the price has to be really competitive for that to be worth it, and that means it might not be worth it for the company. So what they're probably hoping is that they lure you in with a really attractive price for the first couple of years, and then eventually, once they've got enough of market share where people are unlikely to leave, or at least enough people are likely to stay, they can like jack up the price. And I would be careful about getting too attached to subscription services that seem too good to be true. And once again, I just don't love seeing the industry going in this direction. I would much rather just pay for something once, and then even if they don't update it, that's fine. I have the thing and I know it works. The model that I really like is the one that Splice used for Serum, at least back when I bought it and I didn't have a lot of money. It was a rent-to-own model done right, where if I recall correctly, I paid $10 a month and just had Serum. And then once that $200 synth plugin was paid off, the payments stopped and I just owned it. And you could even cancel it and pick back up at any time. And of course, there was no interest or anything like that. You could just pause it and then eventually pick it up again. That's very pro-consumer and lets them sell more Serums. And given how much Serum just dominated the EDM production scene for such a long time, that seems like that was a really smart deal. The thing I'm really scared of is rent to own with hardware in perpetuity. Like the example of Neurophone. They make weird headphones that are supposed to be like adapted to your hearing, and they have all this fancy tech or something. I haven't used them. But they rolled out a subscription model where you have to pay monthly. It's a subscription service for headphones. I've got an article about it up. You pay monthly for headphones, and if you ever stop paying, they will remotely deactivate the headphones, and then you have 30 days to send them back, and I hate that. And on the off chance that any music tech manufacturers are watching this might be a little too dangerous to even say out loud, but I'm going to say it. I hope to freaking God that this never happens with music gadgets. Unless it has already. Like, obviously, headphones are music gadgets, but I mean music production tools like groove boxes and synths. I really hope this never happens. Like, it's one thing to have a full functionality device and then an optional subscription service to unlock some extra stuff, or some optional DLC, like with the MPC paid plugins. You know, I don't love it. I've called it out kind of in a previous video that kind of blew up a little bit, but that's nothing like, imagine in order to be able to sample at all on your MPC, you had to pay a subscription service. That would be horrible. And I really hope no companies ever do it. And so if companies are ever watching this, don't take this as, oh, that's a great idea, we should do that. If you do it, I will call you out and I will not be kind about it. Please, for the love of all that is good and holy, don't do it. So, subscription services and egregious subscription pricing are one reason I don't pay for Adobe. I mentioned that earlier. Another reason, yet another reason I don't pay for Adobe is them dipping their toes into NFTs, which is, I think, a greater fool's scam, a valueless value proposition, and something that can't die soon enough. Companies jumping into it, I also really don't like. You know, the title of this video is I hate it when companies do this. I hate when they go too hard on the subscription model and pushing it and making it unavoidable, especially when they do it related to hardware, and I won't buy hardware that's subscription locked. I also hate it when companies get into NFTs. Fortunately, we haven't really seen that much in the music production space. Once again, I hope it stays that way. And once again, music tech manufacturers, if you're watching this, I think I speak for a decent chunk of the community. We don't want NFTs. Please keep not engaging with them. Overall, crypto and music are just kind of not a great fit. Like, I remember a few years ago, and this was before the crazy NFT run or before like Bitcoin and Ethereum really entered the public consciousness. I remember being approached at VidCon by a guy pitching a way to have creators make their own cryptocurrency. And like, if people buy into it, the value of it could go up over time as the content gets more valuable. And I remember thinking, what a horrible idea. Not only would I as a creator feel scummy for pushing that on my audience, I would much rather them just pay money to help the content keep going and leave it at that and not make it like an investment or something like that. Beyond that, if you are supporting a creator with that and then its value goes up, you're going to want to sell it. And so you're going to try to get out and push it onto someone else. And then you're not supporting that creator anymore. And it's just like this weird speculative thing that ultimately will crash. And as far as I know, that company didn't really go anywhere. I'm not going to name them and I haven't looked them up in a while. But once again, there's absolutely no good fit there. It's not good for the creator. It's not good for the consumer. Once again, I just don't want to go anywhere near crypto or NFT stuff when it comes to music production. And finally, one more thing that I hate that companies do is make their devices hard to repair, either deliberately or through negligence. Now, fortunately, in the music tech world, we haven't had too much deliberate tampering to make products irreparable. For example, in a parallel industry, Future Motion, the company that makes the One Wheel, made it so that if you disconnect the battery, the device bricks. That is very blatant anti-repair, anti-consumer behavior, and it sucks and should be called out for being whack. Fortunately, as far as I know, we haven't really seen that in the music tech space, and if it ever happens, that is a dark day to open the floodgates for that. But what we do see a lot of is stuff that is difficult to repair, and maybe even it's like there's no way around it. But what I really want to see companies jump on the bandwagon of is right to repair stuff and at least give consumers the tools they need to repair their stuff, whether that be replacement parts or guides or even designing their stuff to be more repairable. So I want to be able to do stuff like replace pads, replace USB ports, replace audio jacks. That kind of stuff I think is super important, and I think if companies don't get on board with that, eventually they'll get left behind. So all my favorite music tech brands, who are not my friends, but I'm also happy to work with, and they make products I really like, Novation, Akai, all of those people, I want to see y'all jump on this right to repair stuff. Regardless, thank you so much for watching if you made it this far. If you'd like to see me talk about Akai's plugin DLC, you can click or tap up over here. And I've talked about some unethical practices. If you'd like to see an outright scam, you can click or tap up over here. That can be fun to look into sometimes. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back with a new video in a little bit.